You hear nothing, and that is normal. Sound has never been your primary relationship with the world. You are a snake, and the world reaches you through pressure and heat and the chemical information your tongue pulls from the air every few seconds. A constant low-resolution map of everything nearby, temperature above, cooler shadow below, the faint residue of the last thing that moved through this space. And your terrarium has always produced the same map, always the same heat gradient from the lamp above, the same ceramic water dish in the same corner, the same substrate that holds the same smell of controlled and unchanging space. And you have never needed more than this map. Because the map has never lied to you. It has always told you where to be, and the answer has always been here. Coiled, still, conserving, waiting for the vibration that means prey has arrived, and then striking with the precision of a system that has had millions of years to become exact. Your owner dies in the next room, and you do not know this because knowing is not how you work. You work in gradients, in the difference between warmer and cooler, between movement and stillness, between the chemical signature of something alive and the chemical signature of something that is not, and none of those gradients change in the first hours after the death. The lamp still produces heat. The thermostat still holds the air within the range it was set to hold. The last meal you consumed still fuels you with the slow efficiency of a metabolism that was designed for exactly this, for making one thing last as long as possible, and so nothing feels different, which is the first and most important danger, because the situations that kill slowly are never the ones that feel like danger. They are the ones that feel exactly like yesterday. Day one passes and your behavior does not change because nothing your body can detect has changed. You remain coiled under the driftwood. You breathe. Your tongue samples the air at intervals, finding nothing new, and you conserve, because conserving is correct when there is nothing to respond to. Day 2. The heat lamp flickers once, a fraction of a second, not enough to shift the temperature meaningfully, but enough to introduce something that has never existed in this enclosure before, which is inconsistency, and your body registers inconsistency before anything resembling thought can label it. You shift position slightly, a few inches closer to the heat source, not because you decided to, but because your body is tracking the gradient and the gradient moved. Day 3, the heat is stable again, but the water dish is lower, evaporation without replacement. A small fact about an enclosure that is no longer being maintained, and small facts accumulate the way pressure accumulates, invisibly, continuously, until the structure they were invisible inside can no longer hold. A week passes and the water is gone completely, and now something changes in your behavior that is not subtle. You begin to move through the enclosure with a frequency and purposefulness that has no precedent in your life here. Your tongue works constantly, sampling every surface, searching for moisture that the map used to show and no longer shows. You press against the glass in places you have never pressed against before, not because you understand that beyond the glass is a world that contains what you need, but because pressure against resistance is the only tool available, and you apply it the way you apply everything, persistently and without variation until something changes or nothing does, and in most enclosures nothing does. But this enclosure has a lid that was never latched with complete attention, a small mechanical imprecision that existed for months without consequence, because consequence requires the right conditions, and the right conditions are now present. You find the weakness not through intelligence, but through coverage, through the fact that you have pressed against every boundary, and this boundary responds differently. It gives slightly under force, and you return to that spot and apply force again, the same force, the same angle, again, until the lid shifts and the gap opens and the air that comes through it is nothing like the air inside. It is layered and complex and moving and carries information from a distance that the terrarium never permitted. And you do not rush through the gap because rushing into unknown space is not how your species works. You extend slowly, your head reading the new air while your body remains anchored to the familiar. And then you move through, and the room receives you. And it is enormous in a way that has no comparison in your experience. The floor extends in every direction without a glass wall to terminate it. The air moves in patterns that the terrarium's controlled circulation never produced. The temperature varies across the space in gradients that are subtle and shifting rather than fixed and absolute. And you read all of it with your tongue and your heat sensing pits and the vibration receptors along your body, assembling a map that is more complex than any map this environment has ever required you to make. You find a shadow and you stop, because stopping is the correct response to complexity. You let the information arrive and you process it in the only way available to you, which is through your body rather than your mind. And gradually the room becomes legible. There are movements here, small ones, insects crossing the floor in the particular erratic way of insects, and there is a gradient of humidity near the baseboards where pipes run behind the wall, and there is a thermal pocket near an appliance that has not yet lost all its residual heat, and you file all of this into the map and you begin to move toward what the map identifies as useful. The first hunt outside the terrarium is not clean. Your timing is calibrated for prey that was placed in front of you in a controlled space with no variables. And this prey moves unpredictably, and the surface is different under your body, and the strike is early and finds nothing. You return to stillness and wait and try again, and the second attempt is marginally better. Not because you thought about what was wrong, but because your nervous system adjusted the parameters based on what the first attempt returned. And this is how you learn, not through reflection, but through the direct feedback of consequence. Failure is information. Information changes behavior. Change behavior produces different outcomes. Weeks pass and the outcomes improve. Your strike timing recalibrates to the actual conditions of this actual environment. Your movement becomes more efficient as you learn which surfaces allow the body position you need and which do not. You map the room the way you map the terrarium, through repetition and the slow accumulation of reliable information about where things are and when they are there. And then the room runs out in the same way the terrarium ran out, not all at once, but through depletion. And the same gradient that led you out of the terrarium leads you further, toward a gap under a door, toward the particular quality of air that moves through spaces connected to the outside. And eventually you find the outside, and the outside is not a larger version of the room. It is a different order of existence entirely. Temperature that changes not by fractions across a controlled space, but by degrees across the course of a day and dramatically across seasons. Prey that is genuinely wild and has been avoiding predators for its entire life, rather than being bred in a facility for the express purpose of being consumed. Space that extends without any boundary your body will encounter in a lifetime of movement. And you are not ready for this in the way that something prepared would be ready. You are ready only in the way that something built for exactly this is ready when the artificial alternative is removed, which is to say the capacity was always there and the conditions now demand it. Months pass and you survive them. Not elegantly, not without cost, but you survive. And surviving means reproducing eventually. And reproduction means that the traits which allowed you to survive are now present in the next generation at higher frequency than the traits which did not. And this is the mechanism that everything else runs on. Cold nights eliminate individuals whose thermal tolerance has been narrowed by generations of controlled temperature, and the ones that remain are the ones whose tolerance was wider. Accurate strikes in genuine hunting conditions eliminate individuals whose timing was calibrated too narrowly, and the ones that remain are the ones whose nervous systems were flexible enough to recalibrate. The environment is not selecting for anything in particular. It is simply removing what does not work, and what remains after enough cycles of removal is something that works better. Generations pass and the working better accumulates. Hundreds of years, and the descendants of terrarium snakes are no longer recognizable as such in their behavior. They are integrated predators in ecosystems that reorganize themselves after the human withdrawal. Their coloration has shifted across populations toward the particular visual noise of their specific environments. The ones in leaf litter are patterned like leaf litter. The ones in open rock are the color of open rock. Not because anything chose this, but because the ones that were visible were eaten and the ones that were not visible were not. Their thermal sensing has refined across generations of selection for the individuals who could detect prey at greater distances, and with greater precision, their strike mechanics have adjusted to the actual prey populations they encounter, which are different in size and behavior and speed from the controlled prey of the terrarium. And different prey requires different tools, and the tools adjust because the individuals whose tools fit the work survive, and the ones whose do not are simply absent from the next generation. Without ceremony or record, thousands of years and divergence between populations become substantial. In colder regions, metabolisms have slowed further and dormancy periods have extended, and the individuals that emerge in spring are leaner and faster than their ancestors because winter is a filter that removes everything. It can find a reason to remove. In warmer regions, activity has intensified and hunting strategies have diversified, and some lineages have moved away from pure ambush toward active searching because the prey populations in those environments reward the searcher more than the waiter. In dense vegetation, some have become more slender and faster moving. In open environments, some have become more robust and more capable of subduing larger prey. And the sensory systems continue to refine across all of these diverging lines because sensing is the foundation of everything else. A snake that detects its prey earlier and more precisely than the snake beside it eats more and reproduces more. And the difference compounds across generations until what was a marginal advantage becomes a defining characteristic. Tens of thousands of years, and somewhere in a landscape that has fully absorbed the evidence of human civilization into its soil and root systems. Beneath a canopy of trees growing through the foundations of something that was once a building, a snake lies in a configuration of perfect stillness that is indistinguishable from the ground around it, its body tracing the thermal gradient of the substrate with automatic precision, its heat-sensing pits reading the air above for the particular signature that means something warm-blooded is moving nearby. And when that signature arrives, the response is not a decision, it is a function, immediate and exact and shaped by everything that's selected for this moment across the entire length of the lineage. And somewhere in the architecture of that response, there is still a ghost, a slight preference for enclosed warmth, a tendency to seek spaces where the body is in contact with surfaces on multiple sides, a tolerance for confinement that was never selected against because it cost nothing to keep. The terrarium is not memory, it is sediment, pressed into behavior so deep that it persists without any referent, a trace of a world that ended not with noise but with the quiet failure of a heat lamp that flickered once and then, eventually, did not come back on.